Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning meeting. This is a program for the future of America and the world. Thank you for joining. Dan, Sean, and I will walk you through the day. Some breaking news, a press conference just now with the Attorney General, the FBI Director, and the Governor of Virginia about an arrest of a top gang leader. Let's dip into Fox right now, please.
Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi's coming up. Just hang on 1 second.
Criminalizing and harming other Americans. Caroline Levitt, we appreciate you a lot.
All right, this should be Pam Bondi right now.
It's been a busy day in Washington, but the Trump administration certainly is starting the day off with a big success.
Carly, great job filling in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Get to be on the couch. Have a great day, everybody.
See y'all tomorrow.
Here we go. Now it's Pam Bondi.
America is safer today because of one of the top domestic terrorists in MS-13. He is off the streets. This has been an ongoing directive of President Trump. His directive to me when I became Attorney General of the United States was very simple. Keep America safe. Make America safe again.
So this news is just breaking right now. The immigration crackdown in full force. DOJ capturing one of the alleged leaders of MS-13, and Fox News was along for the ride. This happened in the Commonwealth of Virginia as we say hello on a Thursday morning. Let's get right to it. I'm Bill Hemmer. A lot to get to now. Watching this, Dana.
Good morning. I'm Dana Perino, and this is America's Newsroom. They had a press conference that started around 8:15 to announce this. The arrest happened just about 40 minutes south of D.C., and that was the result of a coordinated operation between the DOJ and FBI.
So President Trump going to Truth Social moments ago, applauding the officials for the arrest, calling it a, quote, a big deal.
Exclamation point even. David Splutton is live in Manassas, Virginia, where FBI and
Okay, let's dump out of this. We'll keep monitoring it. Sean, reaction to this news?
I think twofold. One, I think this is great. I mean, there's three things. One, great for the country. Took someone dangerous off the streets. Two, just shows the focus of this administration. And three, the thing that I found when I first saw this morning, when the news broke out, was this is so. Like the Biden administration made it very clear we were safe, the border was thing, we're taking the stuff. This again proves how false that narrative was.
Dan.
Great for the country, particularly for the people of that area. I know that gang has plagued downtown D.C. now for years. I said yesterday, Trump's the master of the shiny red ball. I'm sure it is just a coincidence that it happened this morning, and conversation has been changed, at least momentarily.
Paul, monitor.
That's and I know, like, look, the tariff thing you might argue, and even then I would say that was baked, but like the idea that you target a gang member, hoping to change a narrative is probably not. I mean, you don't. That's not how law enforcement works.
No, but when you decide to go and at what hour, and that stuff is well thought out. Again, sometimes good policy is good politics.
All right, Paul, watch MS and CNN and let us know when and if they cover this story. I'll be curious. All right, thank you for joining.
Paul, Paul, don't worry. I can tell you when they cover this. You'll be very cold because hell will freeze over first.
See if they cover it in this hour, 9 o'clock Eastern. Again, thank you for joining. This is the morning meeting. Dan, Sean, and I will walk you through the day's events. We'll kick it around a little bit, and then, as always, with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all. We'd all like your questions and comments. So if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. As always, the show is under threat of cancellation if we don't get 3 new people. So if you've never raised your hand before and you're here on the two-way platform, please do. If you're watching on YouTube and X, welcome in. Thank you for watching live or recorded. Do not put smack in the chat. The chat is not for criticism that is personal. Spirited debate, outstanding. All right, today, Merritt Street Media is the new media seat. Sean, you have a special connection to Merritt Street Media and the woman who got the first question at yesterday's first 2 questions at the White House briefing. Tell everybody, who is Merritt Street Media now in the White House pool?
I'm going to try to do it. Merritt Street Media is Dr. Phil's. I don't think that was even very good. Dr. Phil's. It's Dr. Phil's spinoff out of TBN. It's on cable, led by Dr. Phil. My former co-host and colleague and friend, Lindsay Keith, is the White House correspondent and political director from Merritt Street. She asked, as you mentioned, the first 2 questions and sat in that new media seat yesterday. And this will be their first time in the pool.
Yeah, so historic presidential schedule today.
She interviewed me last night. I'll just note, Lindsay did.
Whoa!
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, special Lindsay episode. The pool will have at least one crack at the president today, maybe two. 11 o'clock, he gets his intelligence briefing. 2 o'clock Eastern, signs executive orders, currently closed press, but I bet that opens if for no other reason the president will want to talk about the arrest today. And then at 8 o'clock, long day for the pool, 9 a.m. call time, 8 a.m. event in the state dining room. The president participates in an iftar dinner. All right. Don't know what the vice president's doing. If you didn't see the video of the vice president yesterday laying down some fire, I recommend it to you. House and Senate are in today. The Senate's supposed to be in tomorrow, but probably won't be. And they have a bunch of hearings today, none of which rise to the level of my telling you about them. Associated Press is in court today before U.S. District Court Judge Trevor McFadden to try to get back into that same pool. Their persona non grata in the pool that Merritt Street is in. And the judge will, as always, can rule from the bench or not. All right.
Can I just real quick?
Yeah,
what do you, regardless of what you think personally, what do you think the judge says on this
today?
Yeah.
Oh, I think they'll win. They'll win in the district court. I think the judge will say you can't discriminate based on content. Would be my guess. Trevor McFadden, who knows? As you know, I try never to predict judges, juries, or justices, but I think eventually the AP will be back in the pool under court order, would be my guess. Do you disagree?
Here's the thing. I think after the Acosta stuff last time, it's one thing to take someone's pass. I think it's another thing to mandate the access that they get. Regardless, and that's where I think the line to me is that that's like, and again, the merits alone, whether or not you or anyone else, not you, but one believes it's a good idea or not. I just have a hard time believing that the courts can say this outlet gets access to your office or your places that you, I mean, if that happens, because by the way, once the White House took back the pool. So just think about this for a second real quick. It's one thing for the Correspondents Association to say, we determine who's in the pool and we've determined AP's in the pool and therefore you can't kick them out. Okay, whatever. But once the White House took back the pool, then to force the White House to assign them is, to me, a different construct.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a very difficult thing to argue legally, but here's what I would say. And I have mixed feelings about what the right ruling should be. Not because I'm hostile to the AP, but it's almost akin to saying, the court's going to order the president to do an interview with the AP.
Right.
Here's why I think.
Well, that's exactly, and I think that's exactly the analogy.
But here's why I think it's different. That's not the president's space, right? The president's space, it's the people's space. And the reason there are pools is because there's a limited number of reporters who can fit in that public space. And the public has a right to be represented by the media in those spaces. And I don't think that the White House can say, here's who comes into the public space based on the content of their reporting. And that's why the AP was kicked out. And I don't think the White House can prove otherwise.
I don't want to dwell on this, but here's my question then. And I'll leave it at this. Assuming your argument for a second, if you say, okay, they don't have a right to determine this, then what's to keep InfoWars with Alex Jones to say we have a right to go into the pool too, and we should be part? I mean, where's the line between why does the AP get to be part of that, and then
So this is I think you've put your finger on what I think is one of the more complicated aspects of it and interesting aspects of it, which is not all news organizations are created equal. The Associated Press is in the pool for a reason, because they service hundreds, maybe thousands of news organizations around the world through their content. They are not an organization whose content is exclusive, as InfoWars is or the New York Times is. The AP is a horse of a different color, and I think again, I'm not sure exactly how I would rule, but I think their place in the pool, they existed in the pool for a reason, in a public space, and they're being kicked out not for space reasons, not for any other reason or fairness in terms of rotation. They were kicked out because of content. And so I think the judges will rule they come back in. And I think that's probably the right ruling. But I agree with you.
Will
it's
say,
a very close call.
To put a pin in this, I will say the ruling to me is going to be the important thing. What is the rationale, pro or con?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. And last thing I'll say is I wish the AP would stop being liberally biased, because this would make it a lot easier. Dan, anything you want to say about this?
You guys have covered it well.
All right. So I think all three of us agreed yesterday, and I don't think there's any reason for us to have changed our views, that some of the material that the Secretary of Defense put in the group chat should not have been there. Should not have been there. Some of the material, right? Sean, you're still there. It would have been better.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear, so I'm consistent on this. You guys on this platform, I've been very clear about TikTok, 23andMe. So I think anything sensitive, I'll be consistent. Yes, regardless of whether it's technically classified or not, and that's the point of doesn't make it right. There is sensitive things, and right. I come down on that.
So I think that unless you're in a spin mode, it's impossible to agree with the posture of the White House press secretary and the Secretary of Defense that nothing was done wrong. That's their position. There was nothing wrong with what he did. Not that it shouldn't be prosecuted, not that it wasn't classified, not that it was a close call. They say nothing was wrong about putting that. And again, unless you're paid to say that or afraid of Donald Trump, that's just not a reasonable position to take. Okay. And then there's people on the far end of the other spectrum who think people should be in prison over it or people should lose their jobs over it. There's a wide range of views. But I don't think the position that there was nothing wrong with what he posted on Signal is a reasonable position. Again, I understand why they're taking it, but I don't think it's a reasonable position. Now, put up a tweet, please. Put up the tweet. This is a guy who is a conservative broadcaster, Jesse Kelly. And Jesse Kelly put up a tweet that I think speaks for, as I like to say, tens of thousands. We made a mistake. And by that, he means the only reasonable position to take. Putting some of that stuff on Signal was a mistake. He goes further than I necessarily would and say a bad mistake for which someone should be fired. I don't know who the someone is, but this is a position, again, just to be clear, Jesse Kelly, generally pretty MAGA, pretty supportive of the administration. That said, we, meaning MAGA, the White House, gave them, meaning the left and the press, 48 hours of the news cycle with our stupidity. No need to give them 72. It's done. Move on. It's not a life sentence. That is, I think, the consensus view, even of members of Congress who aren't speaking out because they're afraid of the president. And this is, I think, what's going to happen. So I'd love to know, because we're not going to spend the whole show on this issue today. Some people will be glad about that. Sean, what are the two main lessons about the president, the power structure, the media, the Democrats? What are the two main lessons you have drawn from this story so far?
Be careful who you put in a Signal chat.
Yeah, good one. You probably knew that before, but know it with more resonance now.
Yeah. Well, I have, again, I have some experience, not with Signal or national security screws, but others. And also how they dealt with the media initially. I think that the delayed response as far as the use of Signal as a platform, et cetera, should have been addressed a lot quicker. And I understand, just to be clear, it's, when you have that many people at that many agencies, it's not, I say this respectfully, having been there, where it's not like you're going to one counsel's office and saying, what's the deal? Like, you've got several agencies. What might be permissible in one place may not in another, and you're trying to figure out, right?
And to put that in sharp relief, the head of national intelligence said yesterday in the House hearing, when asked, well, what's the Pentagon's policy? She said, without any embarrassment, I have no idea what the Pentagon's policy is. Because the policies, as you just said, they're right. Different. They're different rules.
That's actually, I mean, having worked across agencies before, there's silly stuff when you get read in somewhere, you're not read in somewhere else. I mean, there's all sorts of like silliness where something's okay in one place but not another. They have different procedures. I mean, that's actually a bigger problem. Yep. Not just with classification, but procedures and policies.
Technology.
But I will say the other issue to me is all sins are not equal. And I'm talking about in the eyes of this White House, right? You think about who commits it and what, right? So the president has a very personal relationship with a lot of these folks. And so who commits the sin matters. And secondly, which sin is committed. So if you think about the stories that we're reading, a lot of it has to do with, if this leak had occurred to Mark Halperin, it would be, I think, perceived very differently than if the leak did in fact occur to Jeffrey Goldberg. So right. I think that's, I mean, I don't know if that's a lesson learned because you can't choose who to screw up to, but to me, that was the other thing, is that, how and where it happens and to whom matters.
Yep. Dan, what are your two lessons from this?
So I think one, the never give an inch mentality was just on full display. And I think it obviously kind of worked to some extent for the first 48 hours to hold MAGA together. But I do think it did some damage just to their overall reputation with independents. And I actually thought for the first time here since Trump came back that Democrats played this reasonably well, in that they did not get unhinged about, the man or a person the way they have about Musk, or just the kind of crazy things they say about Trump. But it was on substance. And they actually kind of stuck to the idea that this endangered troops. It was reckless. A lot of the foreign policy people were the ones out in front. Jim Himes, Mark Warner, people who are fairly controlled and measured in their character and conduct. So I actually thought for the first time we played well. Trump's been a little nicked, and move on.
Yeah.
I will say that to your point, I mean, look, Jesse Kelly, by the way, who's a colleague of mine at the First TV network, is a Marine. He is MAGA, but he calls balls and strikes. When he thinks MAGA screws up, he calls it out. And I think that there's also, this is where they've got to be careful. In my time at the White House, it was the inside knives that you had to worry about. I mean, I had a guy in my own office that was writing a book and taking pictures and leaking stuff, like literally in my own, like just outside my office. This time, it's more the outside game. If you look at the pressure on the White House right now, it doesn't as much appear that the call for accountability is coming internally in leaks to outlets, but it's coming from people like Jesse Kelly and Tommy Lahren. Not that Dave Portnoy is exactly Mr. MAGA, but he's got a huge megaphone and a lot of followers. But you've got a lot of that outside, and that's a very interesting and different dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing too, as you go to this podcast route, those audiences are not 100% dependent on kissing the ring, the way some of these old, more traditional conservative outlets have to keep in the good graces to keep that audience, which is a new dynamic you got to manage as you go to these people to reach voters.
Yeah. So,
by the way, can I just tell you, everyone keeps asking when we'll know. Here's how I think you're going to know.
When we'll know what?
Whether there's, anyone's going to fall for this.
Right.
I think it's not who goes to Greenland. It's who comes back from Greenland.
Huh.
Watch the manifest.
He'll become a counselor
Special envoy to Greenland.
Special envoy to Greenland. Thank you for your service. I'm going to tell you my two lessons, and I'll ask you to keep in mind the difference between what is and what ought to be. I'm not celebrating these lessons, but I'm telling you they're lessons. This was not a gray area. This was an area, as I said at the top, where they did something inappropriate, and they're not admitting any weakness. Now, occasionally the president says it shouldn't happen again, and you could say that's admitting weakness. But the Secretary of Defense is not. The National Security Advisor is admitting it was wrong to put Jeffrey Goldberg on the chain, but nothing about the material on the chain. Okay. Lesson number one is this operation, when it goes student body right and says, we're going to call up down, and we're going to say it's the press's fault and it's fake news and it's a hoax, and anybody who disagrees with us is siding with Jeffrey Goldberg. When they do that, even with dissent, because we talked about not just the Kelly tweet, but there's other people who have dissented. Even with dissent, when they do it, they can, assuming nothing changes, they can tough it out, saying up is down, and get away with it. Extraordinary.
So can I make one analytical point that's interesting as far as, okay. So if you look at the construct of how this occurred, Waltz puts together a chain and says, hey, wanted to get this together. Who's your deputy? Totally fine. I mean, that's a low side thing. Name your deputy. What time? And everyone puts in their name. Bob, Susie, Janet, Bob, whatever. Who cares? Okay, great. Go to the high side is what Walt says to get this information. Again, totally normal, legit. That's how it works, right? I get pinged all the time. Hey, go check your high side. This is what's happening. Okay, got it. That's normal. So if you're Waltz, the sin was adding Goldberg. But in no time does Waltz ever bring in information that goes to a sensitive level. Okay, so that's the Waltz sin.
But he should have called him on it. That's his sin.
No. But again, remember, then what happens is Hegseth starts talking about operational stuff. Okay, so when you deconstruct this, right, and this is the point, is that if you're Waltz, you jump on the grenade. Here's what I did wrong. I added Jeffrey Goldberg. I was coordinating an email text to say, send me your deputies and go look at your high side computer. Okay, I admit I screwed up my piece of this, which is what he's done. This is why, to me, I find this whole construct interesting, because then other people are on it in a passive capacity, right? So everybody's got a little different role in this to say, well, my role wasn't that bad and what I did, and it wasn't like one person. And that's where I think from a...
Yeah, but it's a sin to not say, hey, Pete, stop putting this stuff on this on Signal. Leave this stuff on the high side.
I get your point, but what I'm saying is, so that there's different, all I'm trying to say is that there are different levels.
Like, I agree.
Some of these people are saying, hey, don't get mad at me. I didn't do anything, right? Yeah. Other people are saying, yeah, all I did was organize it. And it's not like one person was, hey, I did this, I pushed it.
I agree.
And then I will say this, just as a side note, because I can't, again, I think I'm very clear as far as what I think of the situation, but I will say another lesson learned for me was don't believe like what Jeffrey Goldberg did at the initiation of this story, which was to say there were war plans and highly classified, was completely BS. He lied. He spread misinformation. Many things can be true at once. You can be outraged at some of the stuff that happened, but what Jeffrey Goldberg did was gaslight the American people as to the magnitude and the sensitivity of this. You can still be pissed at these people if you want, but what he did was highly inflammatory.
My second, go ahead, Dan.
I disagree with that, but for time, let's move on.
All right. My second lesson is I agree with Dan. I think the Democrats in the hearing and in the media handled this extremely well. They were principled. They put in sharp focus why real people should care about it. But the lesson for me is it didn't matter. To me, it's very discouraging from the Democrats' point of view that they could do this so well with the facts on their side and the media on their side and some Republicans on their side. And I don't believe that, I mean, not only was no one fired, and I don't think anyone will be, but I don't believe that they impacted I don't believe they held the administration accountable, because the administration's continuing to not tell the truth. Go ahead.
But Mark, I disagree, and I think we don't know the answer to that, because yes, you're right. They did not get the scalp right away, but for the first reason you said, the right-wing industrial complex cannot allow an inch between them and Trump. You go back to the depositions during after January 6th, it was very clear why they cannot allow an inch between them and Trump. So you're never going to get that in this environment. But what I think you will see is that this has done a little bit of damage to the idea that the Trump administration is arrogant and a little out of control and a little reckless. And every little nick may help us get out of the wilderness and be competitive. Maybe. And so we don't know, but that's how I would measure that. Not did we get a scalp.
Yeah. Okay.
I would just say the only point I'd make on the Dem side is I thought that they had the wrong messengers. You guys have some folks who have, I mean, a Mark Kelly, for example, who's got some pretty solid military credentials, I think would have been, you have, Abigail Spanbauer, who's a former CIA officer.
They spoke. It's just hard when it's the story of that magnitude and there's hearings. It's hard to shut everybody up. I get what you're saying.
And the chairmen are Hines and Warner, who I think are pretty good for us.
Yeah. All right.
I think you have better spokespeople.
I want to get to other topics, but just so I'm going to make this mandatory one sentence answer. Chairman Wicker is to me, Chairman Wicker stands out. He's chairman of Armed Services. He's extremely close to the White House. He's not someone who typically breaks ostentatiously, but he's called along with the ranking member for an Pentagon IG investigation about what happened. Is he doing that? Because he feels an obligation to get to the bottom of it, where the chips fall where they may. B, in order to bury the thing, because an IG investigation, even an expedited one, is going to take place over a long period of time. Or C, some other reason. Sean.
I think C with a little A.
What's the other reason besides to get to the bottom of it?
There's something that, I think something rubbed him the wrong way in the confirmation process, and he's trying to... hey, look at, I can, you want to show, don't forget who I am.
Yeah. Dan.
I agree with Sean. A and C. I think he wants to maybe know if this is more common within the administration and in the Defense Department.
The correct answer, even though it seems counterintuitive, is A and B, not A and C. Dan, where are we after yesterday's auto announcement? Where are we on tariffs?
I think that Trump wants to appear strong, but I think as consumer confidence goes down, he is in a jam, strictly because this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If consumers start thinking things are getting bad and they get a little tight, then you're going to see corporate earnings get a little bad. And that's how you get a snowball. And I think he knows it.
Sean.
So I think he's making it up every day, appear tough, but not actually really do anything.
I disagree. On tariffs, there's one thing about Trump that you go back to the 80s. This has been his thing. First Japan, China now, but autos and tariffs, if you go back, that's been a through line for decades with Donald Trump. And I believe, I will just say, if you look not just at the tariffs on autos, but what's going to happen on April 2nd, some of the comments that he made on China and PPE and prescription drugs. Look, at some point, as somebody, we can either continue to talk about the fact that we've lost our manufacturing base and we've allowed places like China to build our PPE and our prescription drugs, or we can actually finally at some point do the right thing. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be tough. But for the sake of our economic and national security, at some point, it's like balancing the budget. If it was easy, somebody would do it. We need to bring manufacturing back to this country for critical things.
Okay, a couple more topics. Actually, I'm going to combine two in one. If you want to be in the conversation here, particularly if you've never been part, please raise your hand. We'd love to have you be part of it. And don't forget that at 10 a.m. Eastern time, immediately after this program, David Bonson and I will be doing a two-way for members of the community only. So you can't watch on YouTube or on X. You got to sign up by going to twoway.tv/TBG in order to be part of a conversation about the economy. Where do we stand now with all this uncertainty? What's happening going forward? Lots of time for your questions. So if you want to be part of that conversation immediately after this one, please sign up. Go to twoway.tv/TBG to sign up for that private event for this community. So special event elections in Pennsylvania this week. Democrats won a seat that had been long held by Republicans. Next week, there's two House races in Florida in heavily red districts. Republicans favored to win, but people are watching the margins. And then, of course, there's this very widely contested spirited and contested election in Wisconsin to determine control of the Supreme Court there, the most expensive judicial election in American history already, with Musk and everybody else putting money in there. Special elections, if you lose them, you say our candidate was horrible, no national message. If you win them, you say the tides are going our way. It should be a good time for Democrats because it's a new Republican administration, and that's typically the way it works. So, Dan, what are you watching for in these, and do you think that will be meaning in the results? Karl Rove, in his column this morning about this, he's a very smart guy, Karl Rove, basically said, could go either way. Some meaning, maybe not. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I'm going to look for trends across all of these. What is Democratic turnout? Turnout's usually pretty low in specials. Or do Democrats overperform? Where do independents go? Historically, when one party controls Congress, independents kind of don't like it. They tend to get a little frustrated. They see the other party as arrogant. I think what we just talked about might play into that. So I'm just going to be looking for trends across all of them because they're different. Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, those are not insignificant areas.
Yeah, look, I've said this before. I'll say it again. When I ran incumbent retention at the NRCC, I used to say special elections are special for a reason. What I mean by that is I don't read too much into them, but yeah, you definitely need to look for, as Dan said, for trends, for small things. The Pennsylvania race is in particular concerning, right? That was a 150 plus year GOP held seat plus 33 district. There's a lot of finger pointing at the candidate and the consultant's cold spark for how poorly this thing to blow that big of a lead. And by the way, that firm is doing work in Virginia, which as a Virginian concerns me as well. There are things that matter. One, trends. Two, candidates, and three, mechanics. So in the Pennsylvania race, there's a lot of concern about the consultant and the candidate. But to blow a race that big means that there's something more mechanically wrong. You look at the Wisconsin race. Democrats should hold this. If Republicans were to pick it up, that's huge for Republicans. In Florida, the 1st and the 6th, Jimmy Patronis is running strong in the 1st. That's the That's the Matt Gaetz former seat, the Joe Scarborough seat. He should win that. Jimmy's a strong statewide former candidate, raising money, just really good retail politician. Randy Fine, a senator in the 6th, which is the Waltz seat, ironically, is not raising money, is getting a lot of his Democratic opponent is doing a tremendous job of raising money. There is a lot of alarm bells going off in D.C. because if we were to lose that seat, it really is a problem. I think even if we come within 3 or 4, the last poll had it at 3, I don't know. But like, you're seeing a lot of money that should not have to get spent on that seat being spent. That is a problem. And I will say this, the one biggest problem, as I said, special elections are special. That doesn't mean you put your head in the sand either way. And Republicans need to wake up and understand that mechanics matter, candidates matter. If they're not raising money, if they don't have a message, don't run them.
Yeah. Republicans are definitely worried about that seat. I've heard unsolicited from lots of people this week. Social Security is an issue. Yesterday, the administration backpedaled on some, but not all, of these changes in terms of shutting down offices. And it is the biggest gift. It's the thing I hear most from Democrats about. The grassroots is fired up about it. The members of Congress are fired up about it. These cuts to the management of Social Security and the opening the door for Democrats to do what they always do, which is not be actually interested in saving the program, but to demagogue, is right there, and it could be a decisive issue in the midterm. Stan.
But Mark, the thing is, it's not demagoguing. When I was at H&R, no, but hold on a second. When I was at H&R Block, we lobbied the IRS all day, every day. And I was always like, the call centers are a big deal. Like, who calls the IRS to ask where the refund is when you can go online and check it? The number of tens of millions, literally, we say that. No. Same with Social Security.
Yes, I'm not. So just to be clear, the cuts to the phone lines and closing the offices, that's not demagoguery. That's real. And the administration's backpedaled on some of it. What I'm saying is, what's demagoguery is claiming Republicans want to destroy Social Security. That's the demagoguery.
All right. Well,
what I'm saying is the press always sides with Democrats on these issues, and they will side with them now even more. And the arguments will be even easier to make on the demagogic side, because the administration has opened up the door to this by threatening the program's not viability, but by threatening its ability to serve its constituencies through these announced cuts. Sean.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It is real lives of real people who rely on these services that people in, urban centers on this call and stuff will laugh about. Who uses the mail anymore? Who goes to the post office on a Saturday? Who calls the Social Security office? I'm telling you.
Yes, 100%.
So they walked into this, and it's their own ineptitude, and you got people who have no idea what they're doing, and ideologues who want to do this.
They just announced massive cuts at HHS in terms of the payroll, and that could implicate the same idea. But for a guy who, since he started running for president, has said, Trump now, I will never be vulnerable on Social Security. I will never let them get to my left on Social Security. These moves are inexplicable, and it's a rare instance, not unprecedented. Doge is back down on some other things, where they switched course yesterday on some, but not all, of the cutbacks. Sean.
So a couple things here. One is, this kind of goes back to what we started talking about. Regardless of whether you agree with it or not, there's narratives that are inherent in every issue. Like, so on national security and military issues, the Republican side, the conservative side, gets more passes because they're believed that they are stronger and tougher on that. On issues like Social Security and healthcare and education, the Democrats get more passes because they believe they're more caring and empathetic to those causes, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. And so when you touch an issue like this, there's going to be a lot more sympathy. Look, I think that the reason I bring that up is that they, as an administration, should be more politically attuned to the fact, if you're going to go in and touch Social Security, even if it's just around the periphery to make it more efficient, then sell that. Hey, we're doing this, but here's how you can call. Here's what we're doing, right? I get it. There's a problem with bureaucracy and, but it's the same thing with the DMV. If you're going to reform it, everyone hates it, but you still need to call it to get new plates and to register or do whatever, right? And so if you're going to touch these things, make sure you're explaining how you're doing it to enhance customer service, make it more efficient, whatever it is. And that's where I think they missed it on this one.
Sean, before we go to people's questions, can you set up your soundbite from your show last night with Senator Johnson?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We talked about this yesterday in terms of the debt ceiling vote and the reconciliation, whatever. I had Ron Johnson on the show last night. I asked him point blank, where are we on this vote? This is what he said.
President is, admit you made a mistake, go to multiple step process, have the House take up the Senate budget resolution, get it passed, do it now. Okay, it's not that hard. Extend the current tax law, take an automatic tax increase off the table, then get to work on the big, beautiful bill. Now, if he doesn't accept that, I know Leader Thune is trying to work with the House resolution and recognize the reality in the Senate that that's not going to pass. That there are enough of us that will make sure that we're not going to vote for that. And there's no amount of pressure, quite honestly, that President Trump can put on us to pass the House resolution. It's simply inadequate.
All right. To me, that's a problem. And it's interesting because Ron Johnson's no wallflower. Like, this is not a guy and he's got a business background. He says, when I asked him in a follow-up how many votes, Rand Paul's a no. So now you're down to 2. If he gets 2 votes, which I think he's gonna, you've got a problem. And he literally, guys, I'm not, obviously I promote my show, but he said the House bill is meager and the president's been sold a bill of goods from the speaker. That's very, I think that's pretty forceful, right? And the point is that this is you're staring out at the horizon, watching the storm come in. And if I were the White House, I'd get on the phone with Ron Johnson and these other guys and figure out how big is this storm? How can we solve it before it hits shore?
Remember,
let's bring.
He defeated Russ Feingold with that famous ad about the accountant at the whiteboard talking about debts and deficit and spent.
Oh, yeah. He knows this like the back of his hand.
How he rose to fame. Yep.
I bring folks in on mute. Tell us, Neil, where you are, what's on your mind, and if that's snow behind you, or I'm misunderstanding what that is.
That's just beautiful Austin winter weather. You want to be here in the winter. So I'm dragging us back to J.D. Vance's comments. We had 2 of the members, I respect their comments about being frustrated with J.D. Vance's dovish take on Yemen strikes. Well, it immediately, for the last decade, my only customer has been the Department of Defense. I'm a strong believer in defense. But it was refreshing to hear someone speak, question or at least have a conversation or engage in diplomacy, which is, I haven't even heard the word diplomacy in a decade. So it's very frustrating for me that people can't have a conversation without other people getting frustrated about maybe why are we so focused on defense over diplomacy. And my last point on that is a week ago today, and the reason I got on this, I'm a long time first time. I was pre-debate. I've spent way too much time following this show, way before Dan was a twinkle in Mark's eye. And so, but a week ago today, my son, who's a student at University of Texas, got an offer from the Navy, Sean, to fly out to San Diego and basically join the nuclear program. Wow. And so it was fun. He sent over the letter and my wife and I talked to him, and it was exciting. He's a historian, a strategy gamer. He'd be a perfect fit. But he slept on it one night and he says, they're just stretched too thin. They've got too many fires going. He says, why would I go to work for Google if their house wasn't in order? I'd go to work for Apple. And so my comment is the Department of Defense can't recruit talent because everybody is completely hawkish for 30 years. It's just too much. And you can't attract young men and women who are who you really want in the job. You want this guy, and I'm not saying it because I'm his dad. He's a fit, and you can't attract.
Neil, be just a little bit more specific. What is it that he finds unattractive?
He follows political events very closely, so he knows that we've got B-52s that just moved out to the middle, out to the islands, and we've got carrier groups moving. He just follows political things.
But he thinks it's too hawkish.
Yes, he thinks that we spend that. Why choose the Navy when I can go to any national instruments?
I understand. Sean, do you understand? Because I'm still a little confused.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying.
All right, Dan, you go then if you get
Why
it.
don't you go first, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is that we're too stretched, we're too forward posture around the world, and perhaps your son worries that he's going to be in a conflict or supporting a conflict that perhaps, and correct me if I'm wrong, that maybe we shouldn't be in. Look, part of the problem, it's a blessing and a curse when you're a world power and the world is a dangerous, unsafe place, and we have financial and military and other interests in almost every corner of the world that we do get drawn into, whether it's, potentially a war with China or other places. You just have to pray the leadership, makes the right call, the way like John F. Kennedy did in the Cuban Missile Crisis and others. But I think the idea of just simply getting out of the world, it's hard because like China will fill it. And that has real consequences for our bottom line. Businesses, everything.
You have to be able to recruit.
Neil, can I just ask you a question? So is your son concerned that he's going to get into a conflict or that we're too aggressive? Am I just real quick?
No, he just doesn't. It's a lack of trust. He would be fine. He would be fine if he joined. He knows what he would sign up to. He's very aware.
But Neil, is it too much
trust?
But Neil, is it too much? But Neil, is it too much chaos? Is it, as Dan said, that they're overstretched, and so that he might be in a conflict where?
It's when you hear anyone talk about, and now it's both parties, about military aggression. I use the word aggression. They don't think anything of it. They're upset if you're not aggressive enough. Right. So it's one world look, we are the superpower, but you have to recruit people. You can't be in the business and not be able to recruit young talent.
Sean.
So let me just say the following, and I'll start with my required disclaimer that my views are my own, not those of the Department of the Navy or the Department of Defense. First of all, we just hit one of the highest recruiting goals ever. So when you say that we can't recruit, I'm sorry your son's not joining, but that's just simply not true. We actually have hit the highest recruiting that we have in decades in the last several months after not meeting those goals. So that's just not factual. Secondly, going to why we serve is a guy who got into the military under President Clinton when he was president of the United States. You don't join the military because you agree or disagree. You agree because you understand the chain of command and that you want to serve this nation and do your part to protect it. Full stop. I've served under Republicans. I've served under Democrats. And every second that I put a uniform on, I hope and believe that whatever decision the commander of chief makes, no matter what party, is a lawful order and I will execute it. That's why you get in the military. You don't get in because you believe every single thing that the DOD or that the department of whichever branch that you belong to is of your liking. There's been plenty of trainings, decisions, missions that I don't agree with. That's not why you join the military. You can go start your own company if you want to do that. You believe in a sense of purpose and country. And if you don't believe in that, then probably the military is not the place for you.
Well, I think that's a naive position because we don't have 9/11 to rally the troops. I vividly remember when everybody wanted to join. And you can say we have a strong recruiting base, but who are you recruiting? Are you recruiting talent Are you recruiting for people that need the military more than the military needs them?
So just to be clear, I've been in 20.
I'm sorry to say, people.
Neil, I've been in 26 years. There were plenty of times when we passed huge amounts of incentives to get people in. I mean, the GI Bill, the post 9/11 bill, to force people to want to stay in. We've switched I mean, look, you go back and talk to a lot of people about why they got in. But the bottom line is that we are actually recruiting more than ever before. Fewer probably incentives this time right around now than we have in the past. But again, I've with respectfully disagree with the entire premise of what you're saying right now.
Neil, we could keep going, but Neil, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Best of luck to your son. Best of luck to your son. Thank you for being.
And by the way, thanks for being with us since the beginning. You're an OG. You're an OG.
And 1,100 subscribers.
All right, and we don't want you to think it's a waste of time, so we'll try to do better. Neil, thank you. Appreciate it.
By the way, Neil, we were not laughing at you. We were laughing at certain people running around in the background.
Yeah. Certain people might not know are running around in the background.
Yeah, I figured it out belatedly. Bryce, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind.
Yeah, I'm in Indiana. I'm a law student at IU, and I don't want to take too long, so I want to make sure as many people as possible can get in the conversation, but I wanted to talk about the Signal chat again. And, I know it seems like we're beating a dead horse, but I really think this is a serious issue that
it is.
We'll keep, coming back to haunt Republicans. I think, I'm a Republican and I think it's a big deal. I think we should stop viewing it through a partisan lens. In my opinion, the right thing to do is to own the mistake, not make excuses, even if it's, there's different levels to this. I agree there's always going to be different levels. But I think it's also a missed political opportunity for Republicans. You may think, well, that's weird. The Democrats would have the political opportunity here. But for Republicans, I think it would be, yes, we made a mistake. But the Democrats have done worse. But we're different. We're going to take responsibility, investigate, learn, and move forward without excuses or lies.
So, Bryce, can I just ask one? I hate to interrupt you, but just walk me through your thinking right now. So if you had to counsel everyone in that chat and say, okay, guys, I want you to, here's where I think we can do something right. How would you counsel the people in that chat, specifically to say, you do this, you do that? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I think, don't make the mistake of letting a journalist that's opposing the president in the chat is number one. I think, it's easy to make the excuse and say, well, we've all done it before. We've all sent a message to the wrong person and it's embarrassing. But I think that for the national security team, they have a much higher standard and we should hold them to a much higher standard. And I think we all agree with that. And I feel for them because it's a difficult mistake to make and you got to claw your way back from it.
All right, Bryce, I'm sorry, but because of time, I want to drill down on this. So Waltz has said, I let that person in. That was on me. Okay. So is that enough for you? I mean, I'm trying to understand. I want you to explain to me or to everyone, so Waltz has said, I did that. That was my mistake. I own it. Okay. Is that good enough for you or no?
Well, I think my concern was there's a little bit of politics here.
Okay, fine. And that's what I want, but I really want to hear why you so just walk me through. Did he not go far enough? Should he resign? Should he, what is it that he needs to do to get to hit the wicket that you're trying to hit? Okay. That's why I really want to get to know that.
Like I said, I think it's going beyond just kind of saying it was a mistake. Let's move on. I think the team has gone beyond that and started to deflect a little bit of responsibility and said, Jeffrey Goldberg is a bad person. He's always come after the president. I think in fact that makes it worse. To call out how bad he is for the president and coming after him because if he's that bad, you shouldn't have never let him in the chat. So I think
Bryce,
Sean, to your point,
Bryce, I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify. Do you are also troubled by what Hegseth posted or not?
Oh, which post are you referring to?
I'm sorry, by what he put in the chat. Are you troubled by his putting sensitive material in the chain, or that doesn't trouble you?
Look, if Signal is an approved method of communication,
but it's not approved. It's not approved for this. It's not approved for sensitive material.
Well, then of course I want them to follow the highest standards for sharing sensitive material. And again, I agree with you guys. It's going to be hard given the communication restrictions, and you don't want to always have to go to a SCIF to do these conversations. But again, I think Republicans had an opportunity here to change the narrative, and instead of because if it were a Democrat, we would find every reason probably to say that they have no credibility in the national security arena. And to me, if they just own up to it, move on, not even get into the business of making excuses, attacking somebody. I know on Laura's program the other night, she said, "Well, I'm convinced that this must be somebody who wants the president to fail. There's somebody in there that wants the president to fail." And I think that's making another excuse. It's saying, well, this can't be your fault. It's somebody who just is trying to attack the president. I think people are forgiving. To Dan's point the other day, I think Americans are forgiving. I don't know if Democrats will be forgiving in the midterms and the presidential election. I think they'll bring it up, which is why I think the quickest way to put this to bed is to just own up to it, stop, trying to score political points. And I guess my question is, as people are looking for ways to serve and ways to get involved in politics, I think, what I want to ask is it still possible for people to own up to things like this, move on, and not try to score political points in the process? Because I think it seems like there's no room left for real accountability at times, where it's like we have to score another point here to get back at them. And I think that ends up hurting them in the process.
So Bryce, I think it's a great point, and I think the answer is you absolutely can. You have to be yourself. And I think just like in a relationship, if I screw up frequently, my wife's supposed to say, just say I'm sorry. Right? Like I think if you, to your point, if they just came out and said, hey, it was our bad to use Signal and put this stuff on there, we're not going to do it again, I think 70% of the country will move forward, because 55, 60% is actually rooting for Donald Trump to be successful. Trump's authenticity is never give an inch, and when you're hit, punch harder, or bring a gun to a knife fight, like whatever you want to use your analogy. And so as we saw all fall, that is one of the characteristics about Trump that independents don't like, is his just nonstop confrontational, like tweeting crazy things, like just total redirection. At times, people will just say, just admit it. So I'm with you, and it does work. I actually think Elon Musk saying we made some mistakes has been one of the better things he's done, and allowed him to kind of keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, look, generally speaking, I think from a crisis standpoint, it's always good to figure out, to own it, to figure out and pivot. It kills the crisis, as I said the other day. Get the oxygen out of the room as soon as possible. That's how but I think there's a uniqueness. So.
Bryce, thank you, Bryce. Jeff, welcome in. Unmute, please, and let us know what's on your mind if you tell us where you are.
Great. This show is fantastic. I'm originally from Brooklyn, but now I'm in Naples right now, but come from New Jersey. Been watching the show from the beginning. Found out about the show from Megyn Kelly, who probably should get some kind of rewards from you guys, Mark, because she's always touting your show. But I actually saw clips.
She's hired him. What are you talking about?
I know. I know that. So I saw clips on, believe it or not, in a weird spot. I stumbled upon Rich Barris's show, The People's Pundit, and he was all through the election. He was showing clips of the show, and that's what got me into the show. The great thing.
Thank you for being part of it.
There's so many things you could talk about, and every time I think I know what I'm going to say, something else comes in. So I watched Steve Hilton last night, and that was great. And I think that's what the show is all about, because it was actually a normal conversation. Because when you see Steve on Fox, he's pretty partisan. And last night somehow he seemed reasonable, and I thought it was great. And just to piggyback, I wasn't going to talk about this because this whole signal thing. It's just all day, every day. But Dana Perino had it perfect. The president came out pitch perfect the first day. He said mistakes were made. We admit it. That was before all this other stuff in the chat came out. But Dana kind of said if everybody else would have just followed the president's lead, this thing would have went away. Instead, Hegseth came out. And I'm a big supporter. Came out, he sounded like a clown off the plane. They was killing Jeffrey Goldberg, who really was, even though he had sinister reasons for why he probably posted all that stuff or came out, but it was why nail him? Just talk about keep the president's message. We made the mistake. We're going to do things better. Even Mike Waltz on Laura Ingraham, and Dana was even saying why would he even go on Laura Ingraham? The president already set the tone. Why do that interview? And it should just refer to the president's words. And this would have went away.
Really great point, Jeff. Very well said.
I think the problem, Jeff, is they all want to make Trump happy and show their fight. Like, how did Hegseth, get confirmed? He went to the mattresses and went all out, like no apologies, full frontal. It's the modus operandi. They all feel like they have to, and to your point, they should have just followed him, but they never do.
Jeff, thank you. We got to go because I got to be at 10 o'clock with David Bonson, so I want to make sure we end on time. But Jeff, thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of Two-Way and for your kind words. Sean, what do you have on tonight on your program?
Big panel discussion. We're going to talk about Jasmine Crockett and her attacks. We got a lot of fun. I mean, this has been 1 week to have a fun panel discussion, and so we're gonna break through a lot and some fun videos to play.
Okay, 3 Two-Ways left today. The three of us will be back in 23 hours, but right after this program, 10 o'clock Eastern time, private Two-Way. Again, if you haven't registered yet and you still want to jump on, go to tway.tv/TBG to be able to log in. Private Two-Way event with David Bonson, whose Bonson Group sponsors Two-Way tonight. As always, I recommend Dividend Cafe, but the event starts in 3 minutes, and we'll talk about the economy, what's going on now, where it's likely headed, where it looks like a reasonable place to put your money as you think about the uncertainties over the next few months and beyond. Then 4 o'clock Eastern time today, the Moynihan Report. Michael Moynihan back. His program, as you know, sponsored by Fire. Michael's interview airs live at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then I'll be back tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern time for Two-Way Tonight. Amongst my guests, one of my favorite TV expressions, amongst my guests are Adam Mockler of Midas Media. If you haven't seen Adam on the program, he is a sharp young man, super interesting on all things political, with a different perspective on things, a very outsidery perspective, and he's on the show with some frequency, which I love. He's excellent, and so I'll see you at 6 o'clock tonight. And again, the three of us will be back at 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and who knows what we'll lead with. That's all I'll say. Gentlemen, have a good day. And I will bring to the table tomorrow morning my review of Matilda, which I'll be seeing this evening.
Oh, nice.
So stand by for that.
Come have a good day on the show.
Exactly. Have a good day. For those of you I won't see at 10 or at 6, have a good day. Otherwise, see hopefully many of you shortly with David Bonson. Goodbye.